Well, there was a donation drive and benefit concert today in Belfast. Locals came together to donate supplies and raise money for those affected by Hurricane Milton. The drive and concert were at the Troy Howard Middle School. Organizers of the drive plan to transport these donations down south themselves to provide as much support as they can. Now, despite the physical distance between Maine and Florida and the Carolinas, they say in disaster situations like these, unity across the country is paramount in ensuring the safety and comfort of all affected and displaced.
We would want people to help us out if we were in that situation. And it really does take an entire community, doesn't matter, who you are. So this is a time where we can come together and really support each other and remind each other why it matters that we stick together as a nation.
Connor plans to take these donations down to affected areas on November 1st. We'll have the information to donate to Connor's cause on our website.